Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and we're back here again with these two boot New Yorks. We're going to do a little bit of additional repairs on it to take care of these scuffs, so come join us and check out how that's done. Alright everyone, thank you for joining us. As you can tell, we're zoomed in a little bit closer so that we can work on a little bit of scuffing on these shoes. You can see that there's some significant damage, and I know there's a lot of people always asking, what do you do about scuffs? What do you do about scuffs? Well, there's a number of different ways of doing it, especially for cobblers. We have a little more access to a number of different things, but I'm going to show at least how you can take care of it yourself on one shoe, and then when it's really bad like this one here with little pieces kind of sticking up like that, I'll show you one method that some of us cobblers like to do. I know it's one of those things that may agitate some cobblers, I am sorry, but these are simple tips and tricks basically. Obviously, if it's a huge gash, if it's a large hole, I'm sorry, but there's only one way of being able to actually fully properly take care of it with certain fillers, and that is taking it to your local cobbler or specialist who works on different footwear like that. So this is just one type of method that I'd like to show. It's again at home type of thing that you can do. So we'll go ahead and start out. Let's see which one of these. Well, both of them regardless. We're going to start out with some acetone. You could use the Saphir Reno mat as well to remove any old polishes. A lot of the old polishes off of this one I've already taken care of it as far as desalting. This was the pair that we did the desalting video on, but I think at this point we're going to really have to get in there with something a little bit stronger. I'm using acetone. You could use rubbing alcohol as well. Acetone is a little bit on the stronger side, but we're going to go ahead and scrub it fairly well. Not just light cleaning, but fairly well. There we go. As you can tell, it's even removing some of the pigment, and we really want to make sure a number of that is gone. In other words, change spots. I'm just using a basic rag. You don't need to use a fancy shine chamois or anything, or particular t-shirt. I mean, you can use those if you like, but basic rag that you can get at the hardware store works out very well for these types of cleaning scenarios. Okay, and that dries very quick. Solvents like this, they dry up very quickly. As you can tell, it took off the shine. There's a few lighter spots here and there. So we're going to start out by using our Saphir Renovating Repair Cream, or Cream Renovate, what do they call it? Renovatress, this stuff here in the tube here, basically. But that's what we're going to be using on them. Now, this is a little bit more potent. It's more of like a paste, in other words. I'm going to be using my finger. You can see I got white from that acetone there, and that's normal. My hands are used to it. You may want to put on some gloves, obviously. I didn't put any on because my hands are really, really used to this kind of stuff. And I do wear gloves a lot of times, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to put on my gloves. I'm going to do it as is. Anyways, back to this cream. Again, like I mentioned, it's a paste, and it's a little more potent when it comes to the pigment. It's a lot stronger pigment, and I'm going to put it on my finger like this and just apply a nice coat all around and just kind of massage it in there basically. Try to fill in a lot of those nooks and crannies. Go ahead and put some more onto the shoe, definitely. And again, this does have a concentration of pigments, so if you have a different colored edge on here, you may want to tape that off beforehand, but because these are all black and we're going to be working on edges down the road, which we'll get into and talk about that later on with these shoes, but in other words, you want to do a hefty coat, nice even all around, and we're just going to set them aside to dry basically. So I'll wipe off my finger here. And I like to use my finger, not a rag, because you could actually get it fairly smooth with the finger. And this stuff, it's not a big issue to get it off. I mean, you can see my finger there. It'll come off, I mean, with just A little bit of water. I mean, if you want to use acetone or alcohol to clean it off as well, go for it. But anyways, now as far as a scuff like this, you can see that there's a little nick basically, and there's like just a little piece sticking up like that. It takes a little bit more to do repair on that. There's a number of different ways of being able to do this technically. This is just one of the ways that we like to do it. We use this stuff called Pegaflex. It's equivalent to super glue, but it's a specially designed formula that's got a little bit of black pigment in it. It comes in a clear as well, but it's got a certain flexibility to it, considering that it is, after all, a super glue. Super glue tends to dry a little bit harder and can crack very easily, but we're going to be using this Pegaflex, and it's fairly simple. If you have a little spot like that, just apply a little bit there, and then just start smoothing it out. In other words, you could use things like deer bones if you've got one of those. You could use the back of a spoon to smooth it out. I like to use my finger because I could actually feel it, and also when I get some of that excess amounts of super glue onto my finger, I'll just wipe it off there, in other words. Okay, so we got that little bit fixed. It looks like we got a little bit right there as well. Oh. There we go. And it's just smoothing it out. And usually this stuff tends to activate under pressure fairly well. There are special activating sprays as well, but I don't use those. But just pressure and it binds it nicely. There we go. That fixed that at least. So now we can go ahead and get back in and do the same thing with the renovating repair cream. There's a little bit of a deeper scuff right there, so I want to make sure I concentrate nicely in that area and leave a nice hefty coat there. Now there are, I believe they were resins. I have to double check what was in this one. All right, so it is a resin now that I remember. So it's basically a cream that's got resins in there. And yes, some people are like, well, resins are bad. Well, in certain cases, obviously, kind of like the waterproofer that we talked about. In that case, obviously, a resin is bad because you don't want that on your suedes or nubucks. But on a smooth leather, especially when you're repairing it, you definitely want to use something that will work as a resin, in other words. Okay, there we go. I'm going to concentrate a little bit in that little area there where there's almost a hole, in other words. Now at this point I'm going to go ahead and let it dry. I'm going to check through this one. Do I need to apply any more? Looks like I'm still good, but as you can tell, it's not all smooth and nice finished yet, but we're going to let that dry for just a little while longer, and then we'll be back here in a little bit for our next step and continue on with this. So we'll see you back in just a few. Alright, so we've let at least the left one, my left one, in other words, dry a little bit longer. So now this one's ready because we don't have to put such a heavy coat on there. But we're going to take this 1000 grit sandpaper right here, just like that, and rip off a bit of a chunk, just a corner, and start sanding. Now this just takes a matter of patience, in other words, to be able to sand something like this. So just take it easy, don't push too hard, don't be too rough with it, just sand. That's it. Just keep going back and forth. You're probably gonna end up using up quite a bit of this. You're gonna have to change spots and just alternate and throw it away after you're done because it's not really usable afterwards. So just section at a time, check to make sure that you know, if there's still sandpaper in that area that you were using, and if there isn't, alternate spots. So I'm gonna go ahead and just fast forward this and get going. All right, so as you can tell, it definitely takes a little bit of time. Now, I know some of you are going to be saying, well, why didn't you just start with the 500 grit and then move up and so on? I like to start out with 1,000 grit because the resins in here, they kind of dry in such a way where they start to roll. In other words, they like to flake off and all that. And so starting with 1,000 grit, it just makes it a little bit easier to work with. Got some of the resin dust, in other words. And we're just trying to smooth it out, just smooth it out. As you can tell, there's some discoloration. That's because we sanded down to the leather. There's some areas that have that Saphir renovating cream. So there's a number of reasons why I'd rather start with 1,000 grit. You can start with the 500 by all means, but I've done that before. I've tried with like 800 and moved up to 1,000. That works out well too. I just prefer the 1,000 grit personally, and that's how I usually start it out and finish it out. Now, at this point, I like to pull out the Saphir Pomadir cream. Obviously, if you're doing this method, this is for finished grain leather, full grain leather, box leather as well. If you're doing it on something like a shell cordovan or something else along those lines, you may want to go with the cordovan cream. If I can grab one here, there it is, with a cordovan cream. There's a higher concentration of waxes in here. It's a little bit different, so you can go straight to this, but the reason why I like to do this one in particular for sure on finished grain, and finished grain can handle it, the renovating repair cream, it has the resins in there and fills it in nicely, but you still want to be able to smooth it out somehow. And this doesn't have any solvents in here to be able to smooth that out, where this one does, the Pomadir cream. Now, obviously, I've heard many questions about the shell cordovan, that if you get a scuff on there, that's a whole different process. Ideally, it's best just to take it to your nearest cobbler or somebody that you trust who's experienced to handle it, and they'll be able to help you with that. But for your full grain leathers, for at home, definitely this is the way to go. Now, the Pomadir cream, again, there's solvents in here, so your fingers are actually going to get cleaned off, and you just apply a little on your finger and just start kind of working it in, just almost like massaging it, in other words, because you are trying to break down those resins a little bit again. And this is why I don't like to, if you're wondering, I don't like to leave this overnight to dry. I've learned that the resin just dries so much that afterwards it becomes a little bit more problematic with trying to get it to soften up again with the solvent that's in this cream. A lot of big words right now in this video. Solvents in here are the turpentine, so that's what's going to soften up those resins and even them out. Doesn't that look a lot better now? And again, you could use a chamois or a rag, but I prefer just going straight with my finger. You can get it a lot smoother and just put just the right amount of the cream to really start evening things out nicely. There we go. All right, now I'm going to let that dry for a little bit and let those solvents evaporate, and work on this other one here, doing the same exact method of sanding it. It's going to take a little more time, and then afterwards applying the Pomadir cream to start evening things out. So I'll be back here in just a little bit. This is where we're at so far with this one. As you can tell, I definitely filled in that little gash in there, so it's looking a little funky right now. But let me go ahead and get this one taken care of while this one dries, and we'll be back in just a little bit. All right, so got both of them taken care of. As you can tell, they're looking a little bit dull, not so shiny or anything like that, but you can see the rest of it's shiny. I didn't go through the rest of the shoe with any acetone or cleaner quite yet, because as time goes by, we're going to be working on these shoes more and more, and we'll be talking about different things that can be done as far as maintaining and shining your shoes. So at this point, these are all dry and ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and grab my horsehair brush here. For those of you that don't know, we like to use the Four Seasons ones right here. A little price tag on there. So, sorry, I thought I was having some technical difficulties there with the camera. But we'll grab our horsehair brush and just start buffing. And the friction remelts the waxes and brings out that shine. You could use a little bit of the moisture off your breath. There we go. Now, obviously, this is not quite at a full shine yet. We haven't introduced any kind of waxes and stuff, but we'll talk more about that in future videos. But for now, our main goal was to fill in and fix up those scuffs. Now, let's buff up this other one real quick. See, quite a bit of a difference there with the shine. That's why you have to have those horsehair brushes. Okay, so it's a lot better. There's a little tiny divot here, and I mean, it's so small that it's not too noticeable. That once we start really working on more of the waxes and everything, that'll start to even out even more, especially if you decide to do a mirror shine. That's really going to even out nicely. But for the time being, I think this is a good point to get it to. I mean, you can continue on with using more of this right here, the renovating repair cream, to fill it in even more. But you know, it's kind of up to you how far you really want to push it. I mean, these shoes have definitely seen better days. They're in really rough shape, in other words, but they're a perfect project to kind of continue on and work with, and you know, keep doing different things to it. So at the moment, I think I'll go ahead and stop there, and we'll continue on with these shoes later on. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell icon. But let me go ahead and change the angle. There we go. Get back in the camera. Now, like I said, these are definitely going to be evolving and changing and becoming better and better as time goes by. So again, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell icon to see what we're going to continue on with doing. We're going to actually bring back more of a shine, but for the time being, I just want to be able to use these shoes to really show a little bit of a how-to on certain things. Some of you already know how to, you know, put on a nice, beautiful shine, like a full mirror shine, also known as a spit shine. We can talk about that more in the near future when we get into it. But for the time being, if you're new to this, if you are trying to expand your knowledge on how to care and maintain for your shoes yourself, if you're just somebody who loves to shine shoes on your own without taking it anywhere, these are just going to be simple videos and steps that we're going to talk about and how to do it. We talked about already the salt treatment and everything, which has turned out much better on the bottoms even. Yep. A lot better on the bottoms. The edges, however, on these, they've got so much damage that I'm probably going to continue to treat that a little bit over the next week. And then eventually, when it's really time to actually dive in and continue doing certain additional processes, we'd like to do that and let you see how these shoes come along over that time. Now, a few points I'll mention real quick for any of you that are wondering. I didn't go through this whole shoe obviously with a cleaning solution, no Reno mat, no solvent-based cleaning solutions, no alcohol, no turpentine, no acetone either. I just went through on the toes here. Obviously, I'm going to do more of that on the shoe. I was really trying to mostly concentrate on that desalting. Basically, I only cleaned those areas up just ever so much, just to remove a lot of those old waxes and polishes. Now, again, we got to take care of that salt a lot more, and I really don't want to use too much solvents in doing so, because it's just going to dry out that area more, and I don't want to do that. So definitely check out that video if you'd like to on the desalting process if you have these nasty white stains here. Again, it's one of those on some shoes, it may just take a lot of time to be able to get them actually out. That's why a number of us cobblers, we're going to tell you honestly that we might need about a week or two on this, because we're going to clean it and then let it dry and then clean it again and let it dry and go back and forth. So you know, I'm going to work some more on these, and we'll see how it goes. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, there are additional steps that you can take to bump it up. As far as your shine game goes, there's a lot more things to do, especially those of you who know what you are capable of doing with shines and mirror finishes and all that kind of stuff. But this is at least to repair damaged scuffs and things like that on your full grain leathers, box leathers, even corrected grain leathers, and in some cases shell quarter them. But please, I highly recommend, if you're not experienced enough with it, don't touch it. Take it to your local professional or give us a call. We'll be happy to help however we can for you on that. One last thing I almost forgot. That's what it was. I forgot to mention, for those of you who are wondering why I didn't condition them beforehand, well, obviously because the toe is damaged. When you start conditioning them, such as Oh, I had to grab a jar. Oh, I guess I have one up here. Such as with the Saphir Renovator Cream, there are waxes, there are certain oils in here that unfortunately are going to kind of get in the way and not let this bind well enough to the leather. So I try not doing that beforehand. I go through and try to fill in those damaged areas as much as possible, sand it out, and a lot of this is going to come off of the areas that it doesn't need to be on if you're going to be sanding it and putting in the time needed to do the sanding. So once the sanding is done and you use this here, you're going to have shea butter conditioning it fairly well, but again, still we're going to end up going through and conditioning it regardless, the entire shoe with the renovator, renovatoire, if you want to call it, right, as far as the entire upper goes. But to repair the scuff damages, first things first, I really want to make sure to take care of all that, and then when we're going to move on to the next steps and stages, we'll talk more about it and you'll see what that looks like a little bit. But for the time being, like I said, my main goal was to try to fix up that damaged scuffing there. If you're happy at this point, good, you're done. But if you want to amp it up to the next level and actually go ahead and take care of them, you'll probably have to go through very lightly and clean these up with some Saphir Reno mat. There it is, the Saphir Reno mat. And on those toes, be very gentle, just quick brush over, basically. In other words, don't sit there scrubbing it. You're not trying to remove it. You're going to damage what you just ended up repairing a little bit. So, you know, just go through it very quickly. But I highly recommend before doing that, let these sit for a full 24-hour period. Let those resins really dry thoroughly and those waxes. That way, the only wax that you're removing with the Reno mat here is just the waxes from here, and you're not actually removing any of the resins that were in this cream right here. So I know it's a lot to take in, but that's why scuff repair and any of those damages, it's a lot more complicating, a lot more stuff to do. There are other techniques and methods, especially if the scuff is extremely deep. Those, unfortunately, there's not much I can do to show you because you're going to have limitations, because you will either not have the proper equipment or the proper ingredients or solutions for it. So I can't really get into that, unfortunately, when it comes to really repairing deep scuffs that even this just won't be able to handle. So if you really need that kind of work done, send us pictures, stop by your local cobbler, and we'll do whatever we can to help you out with that. Again, sometimes it might not even be perfect, but we'll do the best we can always. So don't expect perfection. It's already damaged. That's one thing that bugs a lot of cobblers out there. A lot of them always talk about it and say, well, this person brought in these shoes here and they expected them to be perfect, brand new, and so on. There are limitations, unfortunately. We can make them better. We can always make them better, but keep that in mind. It might not be perfect. Just wanted to put that out there. Anyways, again, I'm trying to end the video. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, hit the notification bell icon, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Questions or comments, leave them down below, or check out our website, CobblersPlus.com, for more details. And also, one other group I'd like to mention that you guys need to check out is Waxed and Dyed on Facebook. There is a group also on Instagram for it, but the Waxed and Dyed group on the Facebook page in particular is a little more active, where a lot of people do crazy beautiful dye jobs and all that, as well as full-on restorations. So definitely check that out. Waxed and Dyed. I think it's just waxed and the little and symbol, dyed, D-Y-E-D. Is that right? It's easier for me to write it down. Anyways, I suck at spelling, but I think that's what it is. I'll leave it down in the description, so just look it up. Anyways, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.